Welcome to Sinister Stories, where the shadows hold more than just secrets. If you're a fan of the dark and the twisted, you're in the right place. Tonight, we dive into a tale that will send chills down your spine. Before we begin, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss a single spine-tingling story. The beam of my headlamp cuts through the darkness as I squeeze through another limestone passage, my shoulders scraping against rock that's been forming for millions of years. The cave breathes around us, a slow exhale of cool, mineral-laden air that carries the smell of wet stone and something else. Something old. "How much farther, Morgan?" Emma calls from behind me, her voice bouncing off the narrow walls. "Can't be much now," I grunt, pushing my body through a gap that wasn't designed for a man of my size. Davis's note said the chamber opens up after the third constriction. I've been mapping caves across Michigan's Upper Peninsula for 15 years. Started back when I still had a marriage and a normal job, back when I thought spending weekends underground was just an eccentric hobby. Now it's the only place that makes sense to me. Down here in the quiet dark, everything's simple. You move forward or you don't. You find a way through or you turn back. No messy gray areas like up in the daylight world. Our team is small today. Just me, Emma, and Lawrence. The passage we're exploring wasn't on any official survey, just a hand-drawn map from Davis, an old-timer who'd been coming to these woods since the 70s. He'd given it to me a week before a stroke put him in the ground. "Found something strange down there," he'd said, his liver-spotted hand trembling as he pressed the folded paper into mine. Something that shouldn't be there. Then he'd made me promise to bring back photos. I owed him that much. Davis had taught me everything about caving when I was just a college kid with cheap equipment and more enthusiasm than sense. The passage widens unexpectedly, and I nearly stumble as the confined space suddenly gives way to emptiness. My light doesn't reach the far wall. "I think we found it," I call back, hearing Emma and Lawrence scrambling to join me. We stand together at the entrance of a massive chamber. Our headlamps barely penetrate the darkness, but I can make out the gleam of wet formations hanging from the ceiling 50 feet above. Limestone columns thicker than oak trees connect floor to ceiling. The air is different here. Stiller, like it hasn't circulated in centuries. "Jesus," Lawrence whispers, his deep voice hushed with wonder. "How did nobody document this before?" "Because the entrance was hidden," Emma points out, moving her beam across the narrow gap we'd just navigated. "You'd never find it without knowing exactly where to look." She's right. That crack wasn't a natural formation. It was too straight, too purposeful, almost like it had been cut into the rock. We spread out, documenting the chamber methodically like Davis taught us. Emma takes measurements and GPS readings, though the signal down here is spotty at best. Lawrence photographs the stalactites and mineral deposits. I move deeper into the chamber, something pulling me forward. Maybe curiosity, maybe something else. My light catches on something that doesn't belong. "Guys!" I call out, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Get over here. Now!" They join me, boots crunching on the cave floor. Our lights converge on a figure sitting cross-legged on a flat stone about a foot off the ground. A corpse perfectly preserved in the cool, dry air of the sealed chamber. Its skin has turned the color of old leather, stretched tight over bone. The empty eye sockets are dark pits in a face, frozen in an expression of serene expectation. Its hands rest palms up on its knees, the fingers curled slightly as if waiting to receive something. "Is that a body?" Emma's voice cracks. "It can't be," Lawrence says, stepping closer, his camera forgotten at his side. "There's no way in or out of this chamber except the passage we just came through." "Someone brought it here," I say, circling the corpse. "Maybe some kind of burial ritual. But that doesn't explain the position. Most ancient burials placed bodies lying down, not sitting upright like this. And the corpse wears the tatters of what might have been clothing once, but the fabric has rotted away so thoroughly that I can't identify the style or period." Emma kneels to examine it, her gloved hands moving carefully around the figure without touching it. "We need to date this. These remains could be significant. Lawrence finally remembers his camera and begins taking photos, the flash illuminating the chamber in sharp bursts. Each flash reveals more details. The corpse's toenails grown long and curved like talons, a necklace of small bones around its neck, and what looks like writing, etched into the stone platform it sits on. "There's text here," I say, crouching to examine the markings. They aren't in any language I recognize, just flowing symbols that hurt my eyes when I try to focus on them too long. "Look at the walls," Emma says, directing her light toward the chamber's perimeter. The entire cavern is covered in the same symbols, thousands of them stretching from floor to ceiling. They aren't random. They're arranged in concentric circles around the seated corpse, as if it's the center of some massive diagram. "Davis never mentioned any of this," I mutter, suddenly uneasy. Davis was thorough to a fault. If he'd seen this, he would have documented every detail, unless something stopped him. "We should gather samples," Lawrence says, opening his pack. "Hair, fabric if there is any. The university will want to—" "No," I interrupt, surprising myself with the force in my voice. "We don't touch anything. Not yet. We document everything. Then we get a proper archaeological team down here." Emma looks at me strangely. "Since when are you so cautious, Morgan? This could be the find of your career." "Exactly why we do it right," I say. "But that's not the real reason. Something feels wrong about this place, about the corpse, about the symbols watching us from every surface." I take more photos while Emma sketches the chamber's layout, and Lawrence examines the ground for artifacts. We work in tense silence, each of us feeling the weight of the discovery. "There are bone fragments scattered around the platform," Lawrence reports, pointing to what I'd initially taken for pebbles. "Hundreds of them, all broken and arranged in perfect circles." I move closer to the corpse, studying its face. What's left of it? The skin is drawn tight over the cheekbones, the lips shrunken back to reveal yellowed teeth. Its hands grab my attention again. Unlike the rest of the body, they look almost fresh. The fingers aren't as desiccated as they should be. The joints bend too naturally, and I swear the position has changed slightly since we entered the chamber. "We should go," I say abruptly. "Get help. Get experts." Emma looks up from her notebook. "We just got here. And we've documented enough to prove what we found. We need proper equipment, proper experts." Lawrence seems relieved at the suggestion. He's been growing paler since we discovered the corpse. "Morgan's right. This is beyond us." Emma disagrees but is outvoted. We gather our preliminary samples: soil, air, water from a small pool in the corner. Nothing from the corpse itself. I'm adamant about that. As we prepare to leave, I take one last photo of the seated figure. The flash illuminates the chamber, and in that frozen moment of artificial light, I see the corpse's fingers twitch against its knees. Just a slight curl, like it's beckoning. I drop my camera. It clatters on the stone floor, the sound echoing through the chamber. "What happened?" Emma asks, startled. "Nothing," I lie, retrieving the camera with shaking hands. "Just clumsy." I don't tell them what I saw. They'd think I was seeing things. Maybe I was. But as we file back through the narrow passage, I can't shake the feeling that something watches us leave. Something that was only pretending to be dead. We emerge from the cave into late afternoon sunlight. The forest around us is peaceful, normal. Birds sing. Wind rustles through pine needles. Cell phones ping as service returns. We call the university archaeology department, report our find, arrange for a team to meet us tomorrow. That night I dream of symbols crawling across cave walls, rearranging themselves when no one's looking. I dream of a corpse sitting in darkness for centuries, waiting patiently. I dream of hands reaching out when I turn my back, fingers unfurling like pale spiders. In the morning, we lead a team of excited archaeologists to the cave. They bring lights, equipment, cameras, measuring tools. We navigate the passages easily. I could do it blindfolded now. We reach the chamber, and the academics gasp at its size, its beauty, the symbols covering every surface. but the corpse is gone. Only its hands remain, still in the same position on the stone platform, severed cleanly at the wrists, and behind where it sat, freshly carved into the stone. I let it borrow my shape for a while. It likes to walk. That's fucking impossible, Lawrence says, his voice bouncing off the chamber walls. The team of archaeologists stare at the hands, just the hands, resting on the stone platform. Nobody moves. Nobody touches anything. Professor Wallace, the head archaeologist, breaks the silence first. Mr. Morgan, is this some kind of joke? Her voice is clipped, professional, but I hear the edge underneath. She thinks we've played her, lured her whole department out here for nothing. There was a body here yesterday, Emma insists, stepping forward. A complete corpse sitting cross-legged. We have photos. I fumble with my camera, fingers cold despite the sweat beading on my forehead. The others crowd around as I pull up the images from yesterday. The first few photos show exactly what we described, the desiccated corpse, sitting in perfect meditation pose. But the later photos? I swallow hard. In each successive image, the body becomes hazier, less substantial. The final shot shows only the outline of a figure, like a person made of smoke. Could be a camera malfunction, one of the graduate students suggests. On 3 separate cameras, Lawrence counters, showing them his own photos, which display the same progressive disintegration. Wallace squats beside the hands, careful not to touch them. They sit perfectly poised on the stone, severed at the wrists with surgical precision. No blood, no visible trauma to the tissue, just a clean cut through bone and tendon. The fingers are slightly curled, as if still holding the pose they'd maintained while attached to a body. These are real human hands, Wallace confirms, voice quiet with unease. What about that? Emma points to the message carved into the stone behind the platform. I hadn't noticed it yesterday. Couldn't have missed it. I let it borrow my shape for a while. It likes to walk. The carving is fresh, the stone dust still visible in the grooves. Wallace dispatches 2 graduate students to search the rest of the chamber while she examines the hands more closely. Whoever did this would have left tracks, she reasons. The dust on this floor is undisturbed except for our footprints from both visits. She's right. The fine silt covering the cave floor records every movement perfectly. Our footprints from yesterday are still visible, along with our new tracks from today. Nothing else. Could an animal have taken the body? Asks one of the archaeologists, a balding man whose name tag reads Dieter Mercer. And carved a message in English? Emma snaps. Mercer flushes. Maybe the message was already there. Maybe you missed it yesterday. It wasn't there, I say firmly, though doubt flickers at the edges of my mind. We were all fixated on the corpse yesterday. Could we have overlooked writing carved directly behind it? One of the graduate students returns, breathless. Professor, you need to see this. We follow her to the far side of the chamber, where she trains her light on the wall of symbols. It takes me a moment to realize what I'm seeing. They've changed, I whisper. The symbols covering the wall aren't the same as yesterday. The patterns are different. Some have moved, others have vanished entirely, replaced by new markings I don't recognize. That's not possible, Wallace states, but her voice lacks conviction. She runs her fingers over the engravings. These weren't carved yesterday. They're weathered, aged. They've been here for decades at minimum. I'm telling you, they're different, I insist. Wallace turns to Emma. Your sketches from yesterday. Do you have them? Emma pulls out her notebook and flips to the detailed drawings she'd made of the symbol patterns. We compare them to the walls now. The difference is undeniable. Symbols that formed concentric circles yesterday now spiral outward from a central point. Markings that resembled crescent moons now look like clawed hands. An entire section that Emma had carefully documented is completely gone, replaced by densely packed characters that hurt my eyes when I try to focus on them. Could you have made a mistake in your sketching? Wallace asks Emma. I don't make mistakes, Emma replies coldly. She's the most meticulous person I know. If she drew it, that's exactly what she saw. There must be a logical explanation, Mercer says, but the quaver in his voice betrays his uncertainty. The second graduate student races toward us from another part of the chamber. "Professor, we found a new passage." "That's not possible," I say, shaking my head. "We surveyed this entire chamber yesterday. There was no other way in or out except the passage we used. But the student is insistent, and we follow her to the northern wall of the chamber, where a dark opening gapes like an open mouth. The passage is narrow but easily large enough for a person to enter. Its edges are rough, unfinished, not the smooth, water-carved limestone of the main chamber. "This wasn't here yesterday," Lawrence says. "I photographed this exact section of wall." Wallace hesitates, then directs her beam into the new passage. The light doesn't penetrate far into the darkness. "We need to explore it. Whatever happened to the body, this might explain it." I feel my stomach twist. Every instinct tells me not to enter that passage. We should stick to the original plan. Document the hands, take samples, get out of here. "Morgan's right," Emma says, surprising me with her support. "Something's not right here. We should report this, get more people, more equipment." But Wallace is already assembling a small team, herself, Mercer, and 2 graduate students. "You 3 stay here. Continue documenting the changes to the symbols. We'll take radio check-ins every 5 minutes." I want to argue but hold my tongue. Wallace is in charge now, and her academic curiosity outweighs the growing sense of wrongness permeating this place. The exploration team enters the passage, their lights diminishing until we can see only the faint glow reflecting off the tunnel walls. The rest of us continue our work, photographing the new symbol arrangements, taking measurements of the hands, which haven't moved a millimeter. 10 minutes pass, no radio check. "Try to reach them," I tell Lawrence, who's holding our radio. He calls for Wallace, for Mercer, for either of the students. Nothing but static. "Maybe the rock is blocking transmission," Emma suggests, but none of us believe it. Our radios worked perfectly yesterday throughout the chamber. After 15 minutes of silence, I make a decision. I'm going after them. "We stay together," Emma counters immediately. "All of us go, or none of us go." The 3 remaining archaeologists exchange nervous glances, but nod in agreement. No one wants to be left alone in this chamber. We gather our equipment and approach the new passage. I lead, with Emma behind me and Lawrence bringing up the rear. The tunnel slopes downward at a gentle angle, its walls rough and unfinished. Our lights bounce off mineral deposits that glitter like watching eyes. The passage extends farther than it should, farther than the chamber wall could possibly allow. We've gone at least 100 yards, much deeper than the dimensions of the main chamber would permit. "This doesn't make sense," Lawrence mutters behind me. "We should have hit solid rock by now." The tunnel finally opens into a smaller chamber, roughly circular, with a ceiling just high enough to stand. The walls are covered in the same symbols as the main chamber, but here they're more densely packed, overlapping in places like frantic scribbles. Wallace's team isn't here. "Wallace!" I call out, my voice echoing strangely. "Mercer!" No response. The chamber is empty except for a small stone pedestal in the center, identical to the one that held the corpse in the main chamber. This one is empty. No body, no hands. There's another passage. Emma points to a dark opening on the far side of the room. "We should go back," Lawrence says. "Get help. Something's wrong here." Before I can respond, a low rumble shakes the chamber. Dust and small rocks shower from the ceiling. The rumble grows louder, becoming a grinding noise that sets my teeth on edge. "Move!" I shout, pushing everyone toward the passage we entered from. We scramble back, the grinding sound chasing us through the tunnel. We emerge into the main chamber just as the passage behind us collapses with a thunderous crash. Dust billows out, coating us in fine white powder. "Jesus Christ!" Emma coughs, wiping dust from her eyes. "What the hell is happening?" I turn to check on the others, and freeze. The chamber isn't the same. The ceiling is lower, the formation's different. The platform with the hands is gone. The walls are still covered in symbols, but they're arranged in different patterns, forming spirals and whorls that weren't there before. This isn't the same chamber, I say quietly. That's not possible, Lawrence responds automatically, but his voice is hollow. One of the archaeologists, a young woman named Patel, checks her GPS. No signal, can't confirm our position. We came back the exact way we went in, Emma says, studying the room. This has to be the same chamber. But it isn't. Everything is subtly wrong. The dimensions, the formations, the placement of mineral deposits. It's like someone created a replica with slight imperfections, the way a dream recreates familiar places with unsettling differences. Where's the exit? Lawrence's voice rises in panic. Where's the passage back to the surface? We search the perimeter of the chamber. There's no sign of the passage we originally used to enter. Just smooth limestone walls covered in indecipherable symbols. We're trapped, Patel whispers. No. I force confidence into my voice. There has to be a way out. The passage couldn't just disappear. Emma moves methodically along the wall, tapping the rock, looking for hollow spots. Lawrence checks his camera, scrolling through photos for clues. The other archaeologists huddle together, whispering theories that grow increasingly desperate. I find myself drawn back to the center of the chamber, to the spot where the platform with the hands should be. The floor here is bare stone, but as I sweep my light across it, I notice something etched into the rock. Fresh carving, the dust still visible in the grooves. I take different shapes in different rooms. Which one is real? Morgan. Emma's voice is tight with fear. Look. She points to a passage on the eastern wall, one that definitely wasn't there a minute ago. Beyond the opening, I can make out what looks like the original chamber, the one with the platform and the hands. This doesn't make sense, Lawrence says, voicing what we're all thinking. None of this makes sense, I reply, but that passage is our only option right now. We approach the new opening cautiously. Through it, I can clearly see the first chamber, exactly as we left it. The platform with the hands, the symbols arranged in their original pattern, even our equipment where we dropped it. Stay together, I warn. No matter what happens, we stay together. We step through the passage one by one. The sensation is strange. Not like moving through a normal tunnel, but more like passing through a membrane. There's resistance, then release. We emerge into what appears to be the original chamber. Everything is as we left it, including the hands on the platform, but Wallace and her team are still missing. Check your watches, I tell the others. Emma looks at her wrist. Mine stopped at 11:17. Everyone else reports the same. All our watches frozen at the exact same time, the moment we entered the new passage that appeared. Radio? I ask Lawrence. He tries again to contact Wallace. This time, instead of static, we hear voices. Distorted, speaking backwards. Words. I can't understand, but that make my skin crawl. Turn it off, I tell him. Patel suddenly gasps, pointing toward the platform. The hands. The severed hands have changed position. No longer palms up in meditation pose, they're now arranged as if gripping something, fingers curled around an invisible object. Nobody touch them, I warn. Morgan, Emma calls from across the chamber. The passage we came in through, the original one. It's back. Sure enough, the passage we initially used to enter the chamber has reappeared on the wall where it should be. Relief floods through me. That's our way out. Let's gather everything and go. What about Wallace and the others? Patel asks. We get help, I decide. We're not equipped to handle whatever this is. As we collect our gear, I notice new writing on the floor near the platform. Time moves differently here. They've been gone for days. You've been here for weeks. Ignore it, I tell the others. It's trying to confuse us. What is? Lawrence demands, voice cracking. What the hell is doing this? I don't know, I admit, but we're leaving. Now. We file toward the exit passage, staying close together. I take one last look at the hands on the platform. They've moved again, now pointing directly at us. The passage feels wrong as we enter it. The dimensions aren't quite what they should be. The floor slopes at an angle I don't remember, but it's our only way out, so we push forward. After what feels like hours of crawling through increasingly tight spaces, the passage opens up. We emerge not into the forest where we started, but into another chamber, smaller, darker, with a low ceiling that forces us to crouch. "This isn't right," Emma says, her voice flat with exhaustion. "This isn't the way out." The chamber contains a single feature, a human figure sitting cross-legged in the center. Not the desiccated corpse from before, but Professor Wallace, her back to us, perfectly still. "Wallace!" I call out, moving toward her. She doesn't respond. As I circle around to face her, I see her eyes, open, staring, unblinking. Her expression is one of frozen terror. She doesn't react to my light, to my voice, to my hand waving in front of her face. "Is she?" Lawrence doesn't finish the question. I check for a pulse. It's there. Strong, steady, but too slow. Maybe one beat every 30 seconds. "She's alive," I confirm. "But something's wrong with her. We need to get her out of here." Mercer and the two graduate students sit in similar poses at equidistant points around the chamber, all in the same state, alive but unresponsive, eyes open and unblinking. "What happened to them?" Patel whispers. I spot writing on the wall behind Wallace. They volunteered to sit for a while. I needed to walk. "We need to get out of here," Emma says, voicing what we're all thinking. Now. We search the chamber for an exit. There are 3 passages leading out, each identical to the others. The passage we entered from has vanished. "Which one?" Lawrence asks, panic edging into his voice. Before I can answer, a low moaning echoes through the chamber. Wallace's lips begin to move, though her eyes remain fixed and staring. The sound coming from her doesn't match the movement of her mouth. It's as if someone is using her as a speaker. "It wants," she intones, voice flat and mechanical. "It wants to walk, to experience, to live." A chill runs down my spine. "What are you?" Wallace's head rotates toward me with jerky mechanical movements, though her body remains in its cross-legged position. The effect is grotesque, her neck twisted at an impossible angle. "I am this place," she says, mouth moving out of sync with the words. "I am the cave. I am all that has lived and died here, and I am tired of sitting." The symbols on the walls begin to shift and move, flowing like liquid across the stone surface. "What do you want from us?" Emma demands. Wallace's lips stretch into a smile too wide for her face. "A trade. I want to walk in the sun. I want to feel rain. I want to live as you live." "In our bodies," I say, understanding dawning like cold water down my back. "For a while," Wallace agrees, head still twisted unnaturally. "I return what I borrow. Eventually." "And what about them?" I gesture to Wallace and the others. "Will you return them?" "They are experiencing me, learning my memories. When they wake, they will know what it is to be ancient, to be stone, to be darkness." The moaning begins again, now coming from all 4 of the seated figures. Their mouths move in unison, speaking words in a language I don't recognize. "We need to leave," I tell the others, backing toward one of the passages. I choose the leftmost one, for no reason other than instinct. "Wait," Emma says. She approaches Wallace, keeping a careful distance. "How do we get out? What do you want in exchange for our freedom?" Wallace's twisted face regards Emma for a long moment. "One of you stays, sits in my place, learns what I know. The others may go." "No," I say immediately. "That's not happening. We're all leaving together." Wallace's face contorts into an expression of rage. The symbols on the walls begin to swirl faster, the stone itself seeming to ripple like water. "Then none leave." The chamber shudders. Dust falls from the ceiling. The seated figures begin to rock back and forth, their movements synchronized and unnatural. "Run!" I shout, pushing the others toward the leftmost passage. We squeeze through the opening just as the chamber behind us collapses with a thunderous roar. The passage ahead is different from any we've encountered, rough-hewn and spiraling upward. We climb desperately, the sounds of collapse following close behind. The air grows fresher as we ascend, giving me hope that we're heading toward the surface. After what feels like hours, the passage widens and levels out. We emerge into what appears to be the original entrance chamber, the one we first entered yesterday. Daylight filters through from the surface exit ahead. "Don't trust it," Emma warns, breathing hard from the climb. "It could be another trick." She's right. Nothing in this cave system has been what it appeared to be. But we have no choice but to move forward. We approach the surface exit cautiously. Through the opening, I can see trees, sky, sunlight. Everything looks normal. But after what we've experienced, normal feels like the most sophisticated trap of all. "Morgan," Lawrence says quietly, pointing to the chamber wall beside the exit. Words have appeared in the stone, carved deep. "One of you is already me. Can you guess which?" "Ignore it," I say firmly. "It's trying to turn us against each other." We push through the exit, emerging into bright afternoon sunlight. The forest looks exactly as we left it. Our vehicles sit where we parked them. Everything appears normal, but Wallace and her team are still missing. And somewhere in those twisting passages, something ancient walks wearing a borrowed shape. As we stumble toward our vehicles, exhausted and shaken, I catch Emma studying her hands with a strange expression. She flexes her fingers slowly, as if she's never seen them before, as if she's testing how they work. When she notices me watching, she smiles. It's Emma's face, Emma's smile. But something in her eyes isn't right. Something old and patient and hungry. "Ready to go home, Morgan?" she asks, her voice perfectly normal. I nod, not trusting myself to speak. As we drive away from the cave, I check my rearview mirror. Emma sits in the back seat, still flexing her hands, still wearing that not quite right smile. "One of you is already me," the cave had written. "Can you guess which?" I think I know the answer, and I have no idea what to do about it. Emma sits across from me at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she hasn't touched. 3 days since we escaped the cave. 3 days of watching her move through the world like she's trying on a costume that doesn't quite fit. "The university wants to seal off the cave," she says, staring at the steam rising from her mug. Her voice is Emma's, but the cadence is wrong, too measured, too precise. "They're sending a team to look for Wallace and the others tomorrow." "They won't find them," I say. Emma's eyes flick up to meet mine. In the morning light filtering through my kitchen window, they look normal, but sometimes when she thinks I'm not looking, I catch something ancient moving behind them. "No," she agrees. "They won't." She knows that I know. We've been dancing around it since we got back, neither of us willing to admit what happened in that cave. What's sitting across from me now? "What happened to the real Emma?" I ask finally. Her smile is all wrong, too wide, too knowing. She's experiencing what I experienced, learning what it means to be stone, to be darkness, to be older than your species. My hand tightens around my own mug. "Will you give her back?" "I always return what I borrow, Morgan." She stretches her fingers, examining them with fascination. "But I've waited so long to feel the sun, to taste food, to experience life outside the confines of rock and darkness." "How long?" "Since before your kind walked upright." She takes her first sip of coffee, eyes closing in pleasure. "Before you developed speech. Before you dreamed your first dreams." She sets down the mug. "I was there when the first of your ancestors sought shelter in my caverns, huddling around fires, carving symbols they hoped would protect them. What are you?" "I told you. I am the cave." She leans forward. "Or rather, the cave is my body. What you saw, the corpse, the hands, those were just tools. Vessels I created to interact with your kind. Created from what? From those who didn't survive their visits. Her voice is matter of fact, empty of malice. Over millennia, I learned to preserve parts, to construct vessels that resembled your kind. Nausea rises in my throat. I think of the hands, severed yet positioned as if still attached to an invisible body. The bone fragments arranged in circles around the platform. Why, Emma? Why not take me instead? Not Emma tilts her head, studying me. She invited me in, when we found the new passage, when the others were trapped. She whispered to the darkness, "Please let us out and you can have whatever you want." A smile plays at her lips. I simply accepted her offer. I remember Emma's insistence that we stay together in the cave, her strange support of my caution. Had she already been compromised by then? Had this thing been working its way into her from the moment we discovered the corpse? And the others? I ask. Wallace? Mercer? The students? They sit, they learn. They will return eventually, changed but intact. She takes another sip of coffee. As will Emma, when I'm done walking. When will that be? She shrugs, an oddly human gesture from something so ancient. Time means little to me. A month? A year? I've waited eons to experience your world. I want to savor it. A month. A year. Emma trapped in darkness while this thing wears her body, lives her life. The thought is unbearable. I can't let you do this, I say. Not Emma raises an eyebrow. You have no choice, Morgan. No weapons to use against me. No way to extract me from this flesh without destroying your friend. She's right. What could I possibly do against an entity that's existed since before humans evolved? That can manipulate solid rock, that can bend space and time within its domain. What about a trade? I suggest, desperation making my voice hoarse. Take me instead. Let Emma go. She studies me, interest sparking in those two old eyes. Why would you offer such a thing? She has family, people who depend on her. I don't. The words come out bitter but true. Since my divorce, I've had nothing but my maps and my caves. No one would notice if I disappeared for a month, a year. No one except Davis, and he's dead. Noble, she muses, but unnecessary. I chose Emma for specific reasons. Which are? Not. Emma touches her stomach, a gesture so gentle it takes me a moment to understand. She carries new life, she says, voice soft with wonder. The chance to experience birth, growth, development, to witness the creation of consciousness from nothing. Her eyes lock with mine. Do you know how rare that is? How precious? In my endless existence, I've never experienced it. Emma is pregnant. The realization hits me like a physical blow. She never told me, never mentioned it. But this thing knew somehow, sensed the new life growing inside her. You can't have her baby, I say, voice low and dangerous. I don't want to have it. I want to experience her having it. Not Emma's expression grows distant. To feel it grow, to feel it move, to bring it into the world. That's worth more than a century of wearing your form, Morgan. I stand up so quickly my chair falls backward, clattering against the kitchen floor. Get out of her, now. Not Emma remains seated, unperturbed by my outburst. Or what? You'll kill this body? Kill the child growing inside it? She smiles coldly. You won't. You can't. She's right again. I'm trapped in an impossible situation. Anything I do to force this entity out would harm Emma and her unborn child. But letting it stay means surrendering them both to an inhuman consciousness for months. There must be another way, I say, voice breaking. Some kind of compromise. Not Emma considers this, head tilted. Perhaps. I need experience, sensation, life. But perhaps I don't need all of Emma's time. What do you mean? A sharing arrangement. I will allow Emma to surface during daylight hours, to live her life, to nurture the child. At night, when humans sleep, I will take control. How do I know you'll honor that agreement? Because I am ancient, Morgan. Because I have watched your kind break promises for millennia, and it has always led to suffering. She stands, moving with Emma's body but not Emma's motion, too fluid, too perfect. We creatures of darkness understand the importance of bargains, of balance. I don't trust her. How could I? But what choice do I have? If I agree to this, how would it work? Emma would be conscious during the day, from sunrise to sunset. She would remember nothing of my time in control. For her, the nights would be dreamless sleep. Not Emma moves toward the window, gazing out at the sunlit yard. In return, I experience the pregnancy, the birth, the first year of the child's life. Then I return to my domain, taking nothing but memories. A year of nights, I murmur. And then you're gone for good? From Emma, yes. The cave will always be my true form. My home. She turns back to face me. Do we have a bargain? Everything in me rebels against the idea. But what's the alternative? I have no weapons against a being older than humanity itself. No way to fight something that can bend reality within its domain. I need to speak with the real Emma first, I demand. I need to know this is what she wants. Not Emma considers this, then nods slowly. At sunrise tomorrow, come to the entrance of the cave. I will allow her consciousness to surface, and you may speak with her. She moves toward the door. Until then, I have a world to experience. She leaves, borrowing Emma's car keys, her wallet, her life. I watch through the window as she drives away, heading God knows where, to experience God knows what. The weight of the situation crushes down on me. I sink to the floor, back against the kitchen cabinets, and try to think. I need help, but who would believe me? Who could possibly understand what we're dealing with? Davis. Davis would have known what to do. He'd been exploring caves his entire life, had encountered things that defied explanation. But Davis is gone. Or is he? His notes, his journals, they're still in his cabin. If anyone had encountered something like this before, documented it, found a way to fight it, it would have been him. I drive to Davis's cabin as the sun sets, painting the sky in streaks of red that remind me too much of the symbols on the cave walls. The property is isolated, tucked away at the end of a dirt road that most GPS systems can't find. Davis had liked his privacy. The door is locked, but I know where he kept the spare key, under a fake rock beside the porch steps. Inside, the cabin smells of dust and abandonment. No one has been here since Davis died. His study is in the back, walls lined with shelves of journals, maps, specimens collected over decades of exploration. I start with his most recent journals, working backward, searching for any mention of the cave system we discovered. Hours pass as I pore over his cramped handwriting, diagrams, maps annotated with cryptic symbols. Nothing seems relevant until I reach a journal dated 12 years ago. A passage catches my eye. Found something in the northern system today. A chamber that shouldn't exist. The dimensions don't make sense. It's larger inside than the surrounding rock formation would allow. Inside, symbols covering every surface, and at the center a body, perfectly preserved, sitting cross-legged. Not a mummy, not a corpse as we understand it. Something else. Something watching. My heart races. Davis had found the chamber before, had encountered the entity. I read on. It spoke to me. Not with words, but directly into my mind. Offered me knowledge, experience, life beyond my own. Wanted to borrow me, it said. Just for a while. I declined, but I fear it has followed me home somehow. The symbols from the cave walls keep appearing in my dreams, rearranging themselves. Sometimes I wake to find them carved into my bedside table, my bathroom mirror. I'm taking precautions. The next few pages detail protective measures, Symbols Davis carved around his property, substances he believed would repel the entity, salt mixed with iron filings, certain herbs burned at thresholds, mirrors positioned to reflect specific angles of light. "It fears its own reflection," Davis wrote. "Not in conventional mirrors, but in silver polished to perfect smoothness. It cannot bear to see its true form captured in silver. The effect is temporary, but sufficient to force it to retreat. Silver mirrors." I searched the cabin frantically, looking for the implements Davis described. In a locked cabinet in his bedroom, I find them. 3 small mirrors in silver frames, the reflective surfaces untarnished despite the years. I also find a small leather pouch containing a fine gray powder. Davis's notes identify it as a mixture of silver dust, iron filings, and pulverized limestone from the cave itself. "Weakens its connection to borrowed flesh," he wrote. "Creates a barrier it cannot cross." Armed with these discoveries, I return home to wait for dawn, when I'll meet the entity at the cave entrance and speak with the real Emma. If Davis was right, I might have a way to force this thing to release her, or at least to ensure it honors whatever bargain we strike. I arrive at the cave entrance as the first light of dawn breaks over the trees. Not Emma is already there, sitting cross-legged on a flat rock near the opening, eyes closed, head tilted toward the brightening sky. "I didn't think you'd actually come," I say, approaching cautiously. Her eyes open. For a moment, they reflect the early morning light with an inhuman glow. Then, they're just Emma's eyes again. "I keep my promises, Morgan." Her voice still carries that ancient cadence. "Emma will surface with the sun. You may speak with her until the sun fully clears the horizon." "How will I know it's really her?" A smile plays at her lips. "You'll know." As the sun's edge appears above the tree line, Emma's body goes rigid. Her back arches, her fingers splay wide, her mouth opens in a silent scream. Then she collapses forward, catching herself with her hands against the rock. When she looks up, I know instantly it's really Emma. Her eyes, her expression, the way she holds herself, all return to the person I've known for years. "Morgan?" Her voice breaks. "What's happening? Where are we?" I rush to her side, helping her sit upright. "Emma, listen. We don't have much time. Do you remember the cave? The corpse we found?" She nods, confusion giving way to dawning horror. "The hands. The message on the wall. Then everything gets jumbled." Her hand moves to her stomach protectively. "There's something inside me, Morgan. Something old and cold and patient." "I know," I say, taking her hands in mine. "It's letting you surface just for a few minutes. I need to know. Did you make a deal with it? Did you offer yourself in exchange for our escape?" Tears well in her eyes. "I don't remember. Maybe. Everything was collapsing and I was so scared. I might have prayed to anything that would listen." I squeeze her hands. "Emma, there might be a way to force it out. Davis found this thing years ago. He documented ways to weaken it to make it retreat." Hope flares in her eyes, but it's quickly replaced by fear. "The baby," she whispers. "I'm pregnant, Morgan. 3 months. If something happens to me, I know about the baby. It does, too. That's why it chose you." Horror washes over her face as she understands. It wants to experience the pregnancy, the birth. Yes, it's offering a deal. It controls you at night. You live your life during the day. For a year. Then, it leaves. Emma shakes her head, panic rising. No. I can't let that thing share my body, share my baby. There has to be another way." "There might be. Davis found..." Emma's body suddenly goes rigid again. The sun has nearly cleared the horizon, its light now falling fully on her face. "Morgan," she gasps, voice strained as if fighting for each word. "It's pulling me back down, coming forward again. The silver. Davis knew. The cave." Her words cut off as her body slumps forward. When she straightens, the ancient presence has returned to her eyes. "Time's up," Not Emma says coldly. Have you reached your decision? Do you accept my terms? I stand, putting distance between us. Number, I want you out of her. Completely. Not. Emma sighs, a sound like wind through stone. Then you condemn her to darkness. I will simply take her fully, retreat to my domain. You will never see either of them again. You won't, I say, reaching into my pocket for the first of Davis's silver mirrors. Because I know what you fear. I pull out the mirror, angling it to catch the morning sunlight. Not, Emma hisses, raising a hand to shield her eyes from the reflection. For an instant, I glimpse something in the silver surface. Not Emma's face, but something ancient and inhuman, a face composed of living stone and darkness. Davis! She snarls. He promised never to reveal my weakness. Davis is dead, I reply, advancing slowly, keeping the mirror trained on her. But he left notes, detailed ones. Not Emma backs away, moving toward the cave entrance. You can't maintain this forever. The moment you lower that mirror, I'll take her completely. I don't need forever. I reach into my other pocket, withdrawing the leather pouch of silver dust mixture. Just long enough to create a barrier you can't cross. Her eyes widen with recognition. No! I toss a handful of the mixture in a line between us. It falls to the ground, glittering in the morning light. Not Emma stops short, unable to cross the line. Davis discovered you can be contained, I say, drawing another line of the powder to my right, then my left, creating a half circle around her. Not destroyed, but bounded, restricted. You're trapping your friend too, Not Emma warns. Is that what you want? I'm creating a negotiating position. I complete the circle of powder, fully enclosing her. Now we make a new deal. Not Emma's features contort with rage, an expression I have never seen on Emma's face. What deal? You've trapped me. Temporarily. This mixture will degrade within hours, but I have more, enough to reapply it daily if needed. I hold up the silver mirror again. And these to weaken. Your hold if you try to renege. She studies me, calculation replacing anger. What do you propose? You leave, Emma, now completely. She laughs, a sound like rocks grinding together. Impossible. I need a physical form to experience your world. I've waited too long to give up now. Then take me instead, I offer again. My body for hers. Not Emma tilts her head, considering. You lack what makes her valuable. The new life growing within. But I have something else, I counter. Knowledge, experience. I've mapped cave systems across this continent for 15 years. I know passages, chambers, formations you've never experienced. I can take you to them, let you expand your domain beyond the single system you've known for millennia. Interest flickers in those ancient eyes. You would guide me to new domains? Willingly? In exchange for Emma's complete freedom? Yes. Not. Emma paces within the circle of powder, Emma's body moving with unnatural fluidity. Why should I trust you? You've already demonstrated your willingness to use weapons against me. Because unlike you, I can't live for eons. You get me for a natural human lifespan. Decades, not just a year. And when I die, the experiences, the knowledge, all of it returns with you to your domain. She stops pacing, eyes fixed on me. A full surrender? Your body, your consciousness, subsumed entirely. Number the same arrangement you offered Emma. You control at night, I live my life during the day, until my natural death. Not Emma considers this, head tilted. I can almost see the calculations behind those borrowed eyes. A year of nights with Emma versus decades with me. You would honor this bargain? She asks finally. No attempts to expel me once I release your friend? As long as you keep your end. Emma goes free, completely free, with no memory of what happened. Her pregnancy proceeds normally. The child grows up without your influence. Not. Emma extends Emma's hand, palm up toward me but stopping short of the silver dust barrier. We have a bargain, Morgan. But know this. If you betray me, I will return to her. I will take them both. And you will never find them in the endless passages of my domain. I nod, understanding the threat. Dawn to dusk is mine. Dusk to dawn is yours. You experience the world through me, but you do not harm anyone. Do not reveal yourself to anyone. Agreed. How do we proceed? I ask, uncertainty finally creeping into my voice. Lower your barriers. Put away your silver. Stand before me and accept me willingly. I hesitate, every survival instinct screaming at me to run. But I think of Emma, of the child she carries, of the life they deserve. I scuff a gap in the circle of powder with my boot. I lower the silver mirror, returning it to my pocket. Not Emma steps through the broken circle, advancing until she stands directly before me. She reaches up, placing Emma's hands on either side of my face. Her touch is cold, much colder than human flesh should be. Close your eyes, she commands. Open your mind. I obey, forcing myself to relax, to accept whatever comes next. Emma gasps, the sound distinctly her own again. I open my eyes to see her, the real her, staring at me in confusion and growing horror. Morgan, what's happening? What did you do? Before I can answer, I feel it. A cold presence flowing into me, seeping through my skin, filling the spaces behind my eyes. My body goes rigid, then heavy, like I'm made of stone rather than flesh. Emma stumbles backward, watching in horror as the entity transfers itself from her to me. I try to speak, to reassure her, but I can't control my own mouth. My vision darkens at the edges, consciousness receding like tide from shore. The last thing I see is Emma's face, tears streaming down her cheeks as she realizes what I've done. Then darkness enfolds me, a darkness older than humanity, filled with the whispers of ancient things. When I wake, the sun is high in the sky. I'm sitting in my truck, parked at the overlook above the cave system. My body is my own again, though I feel changed, hollowed out, like something vast has carved a space inside me. Emma is gone. A note sits on the passenger seat, written in her familiar handwriting. I remember everything now. What I did in the cave, what you did to save me. I've gone home to process, to try to understand, to prepare for what's coming. Please don't call for a while. I need time. But thank you, Morgan. I'll make sure your sacrifice means something. For both of us. For all three of us. I fold the note carefully, tucking it into my wallet. My watch shows noon, 7 hours until sunset, until the ancient consciousness stirs within me and takes control. I start the truck and drive toward home, toward the life I'll now live only half of. Davis's journals are spread across my kitchen table, filled with information about the entity I now carry. Perhaps there are answers there, ways to protect myself, to ensure the bargain stays balanced. As I drive, I catch movement in my rearview mirror, symbols shifting across the glass, rearranging themselves into patterns only I can read now. A message from my passenger, a reminder of its presence. I will honor our bargain. Morgan, will you? Yes, I say aloud to the empty truck, for as long as I live. And that's the true terror of my situation. Not that I'll lose control each night. Not that an ancient entity will walk wearing my skin when darkness falls, but that I made this choice willingly, traded away half my existence to save a friend. And given the chance, I would make the same choice again. The sun tracks across the sky, counting down the hours until my first surrender. I wonder what it will do with my body tonight, where it will go, what it will experience. I wonder if, like Emma, I'll remember nothing of its time in control, or if, unlike her, I'll be forced to watch from behind my own eyes as something else lives my life. The answer waits for me at sunset. For now, I drive toward home, toward the journals that might hold the key to surviving this bargain I've struck with something older than humanity itself. For now, I'm still Morgan, still human, still myself. But dusk approaches, and with it, the beginning of a new arrangement, a new existence, a borrowed shape that likes to walk,